The stars did not scream when they died, but the silence left in their wake did. In the outermost reaches of the galaxy, where space blurred into myth, a planet burned. Its name had once been Relly's Prime, a trade hub known for its coral-colored skies and floating markets. Now it was ash, its orbital rings shattered, its oceans vaporized. From the surface, what remained of its atmosphere glowed with strange, unnatural colors, the residue of exotic weapons designed not to conquer, but to erase. The Valkyrie had returned. No one knew where they had been for the last 10,000 years. Ancient records from the early empires spoke of them in fragmented terror. Creatures of shadow and light, armored in black star steel, moving through the void with ships that drank gravity and spat energy storms. They had vanished before the first galactic accord was signed, before most species had even reached the stars. But now they were back, and they brought no demands, only destruction. Across the known systems, panic spread like wildfire. On Helios 3, counselors argued while evacuation ships overloaded and burst into flames on the tarmac. On Serial Station, diplomats watched encrypted feeds of Valkyrie dreadnoughts descending on border worlds, their massive hulls blotting out suns. Resistance formed quickly and died even faster. The Valkyrie did not communicate. They did not occupy. They obliterated. And yet, not all was lost. On the broken world of Virlon, amidst collapsed spires and hollowed-out cities, a small group of survivors watched the sky. One of them, a lean, wiry Arcanite named Veth, adjusted the focus on a cracked telescope fashioned from scavenged tech. His violet eyes, glowing faintly in the twilight, narrowed. "They're moving faster," he said quietly. Behind him, a tall figure stepped forward. Her skin shimmered faintly, crystalline in the fading light. Soraya, last of the Council's core envoys, had not spoken much since her entire delegation was vaporized in front of her. She knelt beside Veth and peered into the scope. "You're sure they're not repositioning for another strike?" "No," Veth replied. "This isn't orbital patterning. This is searching." Soraya's crystalline fingers clenched. "They're not just wiping systems. They're hunting." Above them, the stars blinked in rhythmic silence. The survivors didn't know it, but at that moment, similar conversations were happening across a dozen shattered worlds. Refugees in asteroid belts, hidden enclaves on moons, deep-sea bunkers on water planets, all realizing the same truth. The Valkyrie weren't simply conquering the galaxy. They were erasing memory, culture, language, even the remnants of the dead. Scoured. Artificial intelligences crumbled in silence. Libraries burned. The Valkyrie didn't just want to win. They wanted the galaxy to forget that anything had come before them. From their command vessel, a massive obsidian construct dubbed the Choir of Silence, the Valkyrie pre-march watched the chaos unfold. Its face, a shimmering mask of mirrored hexagons, reflected data streams and star maps. It never spoke aloud. Its thoughts were broadcast in pulses of quantum code, received only by its kin. To the Valkyrie, language was an artifact of lesser species, unnecessary for those who understood each other perfectly through the void. But if it could speak, the pre-march might have said this. It begins again. It had seen the rise and fall of empires, had watched with indifference as species fought, loved, evolved, and forgot. The Valkyrie had been patient. Now, their patience was over. Their purpose had resumed. But there was something they hadn't anticipated. Back on Virlon, Soraya stood up, looking skyward. She spoke to no one in particular, but her voice was clear. "The Council is gone. Our fleets are gone. Even the AI sanctums have fallen silent. We have nothing left." "Not nothing," Veth said. Soraya turned to him. "Hope? Don't speak to me of hope." Veth smiled faintly. "Not hope, memory." He walked toward a charred console embedded in the stone ruins. His fingers danced across broken keys, triggering an ancient sequence. A soft hum filled the air as a sphere rose from the console, old, battered, but intact. It glowed faintly blue, then began to pulse in a rhythm. Soraya stared. "That's a human beacon. Encoded during the last Orion collapse." Veth said. "The humans sent them across the stars before their disappearance. Fail-safes, warnings, perhaps more. Soraya's voice trembled. But humans are gone. They vanished centuries ago. Are you sure? Veth asked quietly. A pause. Then, far above the ruins, the air shimmered, and space bent. A point of light flared high in orbit, blue, cold, and unnatural. It grew brighter, then elongated, forming the outline of something massive. Engines pulsed like heartbeats. The shape solidified into a ship unlike anything in known archives. Sleek, angular, black as obsidian, its surface laced with glowing veins of cobalt energy. It did not announce itself, but it had been summoned. Across the galaxy, sensors triggered. Hidden systems, long dormant, awoke. In deep space, a derelict relay station powered on for the first time in centuries. In the ruins of the old Terran colonies, message logs updated with a single line of code. Aegis protocol, engaged. The Varkari, blind in their silence, noticed the anomaly. The choir of silence shifted course. Back on Virlon, the survivors stood in stunned silence. What is it? Soraya asked, voice barely above a whisper. Veth's reply was almost reverent. A warship. Human. But why now? The blue glow intensified, casting long shadows over the dead world below. As if in response, a single signal beamed down from the ship. No encryption, no code, just words. We remember. The message echoed through abandoned comms, across fractured satellites, into every listening device left among the ruins of civilization. On the Varkari command ship, the pre-march paused. It had felt this frequency before. A whisper in the dark, a scar in its perfect memory. Not all was forgotten. And for the first time in eons, the Varkari hesitated. The survivors of Virlon watched the sky. Hope neither spoken nor dared. The war was not over. It had only just begun. The stars blurred into lines as the Aegis Nova tore through space, silent as a thought. Within its obsidian hull, time moved differently, measured not by clocks or celestial cycles, but by purpose. It had been waiting for centuries, slumbering in the folds between dimensions, beyond the eyes of machines and the reach of light. Until now, Commander Alara Miles sat alone in the cockpit, surrounded by a dim corona of interface lights. Her eyes were sharp, the color of storm cloud steel, and her face bore the kind of stillness that came from too many years in cryo-sleep and far too few among the living. A thin, web-like implant traced from her temple into her neck, an interface node, binding her consciousness to the ship's core intelligence. The connection was intimate. When she blinked, the ship responded. When she thought, it moved. She had not spoken in hours, not since the wake-up sequence reconstituted her body from stasis. Muscles restored, neurons rewired, memories checked and double-checked for coherence. She was as human as the war had left her, nothing more, and certainly nothing less. A soft voice echoed inside her skull. We have arrived. Virlon is below. Varkari presence confirmed. The ship's AI, designated Orion, was not like other synthetics. It didn't simulate emotion or mimic human speech patterns. It spoke with clarity, concision, and just enough presence to avoid feeling like a ghost. Alara's fingers flexed around the pilot's chair as she reviewed the data pouring into her neural stream. Atmospheric decay, radiation pockets, signs of residual weapons fire, and faint life signatures. I saw this world once, she murmured, more to herself than to Orion. Back, when it was still on the trade routes. Gardens in the sky, floating cities. Survivors are minimal. Estimated population, 47. Her jaw tightened. The Varkari didn't just destroy life. They erased lineage, legacy. Everything they touched became silence. Alara's mind drifted, unbidden, to Earth. The last transmission had come 211 years ago, a fractured signal buried in static, reporting the fall of Luna Base. After that, nothing. Humanity had vanished from galactic stage, presumed extinct, their worlds razed, their technology either destroyed or buried so deeply that even time forgot. But some things refused to stay buried. Alara's mission had been written in secrecy, in the dying breaths of the Terran High Command. The Aegis Nova was never meant to patrol, never meant to serve in fleets. It was the last of its kind, a relic of a war humanity didn't win, but refused to surrender, built in orbit over Saturn's broken moons, forged from alloys mined in forbidden systems, and powered by a void core that had cost 1,000 lives to stabilize. She had been chosen not for her rank, but for her endurance. Target, Valkyrie fleet, she said, voice steady. Engage, minimal posture. No transmissions until I say otherwise. Confirmed. Initiating cloaked observation. Firing systems on standby. The ship adjusted its orbit, silent and unseen, slipping into the shadows of Virulon's remains. Below, Valkyrie constructs prowled the ruins, angular machines the size of small buildings, their surfaces rippling with iridescent patterns. They scanned endlessly, searching for resistance, for technology, for anything that hinted at identity. Ilera watched them through the hull's enhanced vision systems, her lips curling in disgust. The Valkyrie weren't predators. They were sensors. Any sign they noticed us? Negative. Our signature remained suppressed. Their sensory lattice is primitive by comparative metrics. She allowed herself a small smile. For all their terror, the Valkyrie hadn't evolved. They had relied on the same tactics they used during the Orion collapse. Overwhelming force, psychological warfare, targeted memory erasure. It had worked on the galaxy. But humanity had always been too stubborn to forget. Ilera leaned back, closing her eyes. The neural interface pulsed gently, feeding her archived mission logs, combat scenarios, tactical overlays. She saw again the final days of the Terran resistance. Cities folding under pressure, alliances breaking, sky-choked firestorms. She saw the orbital platform where her ship had been sealed, her body frozen, her mind stored in quantum flux. And she remembered the voice of General Astor Vale, humanity's last strategist, whispering in her ear just before the deep freeze. This ship is our blade. Ilera, one day, they'll forget we ever lived. And that's when you'll remind them. Her eyes opened. Orion. Prepacom's burst. To whom? To the survivors on the planet. Encrypted human band signal. They'll recognize it if they're smart. Message. She hesitated. She could say 100 things, reassurance, commands, strategy, but words didn't matter now. Not really. Same as before. One line. Confirmed. Broadcasting. We remember. She watched the transmission go, a ghost light in the void. Somewhere down there, if luck still had meaning, someone would be listening. Her hand hovered over the weapon's console. The Valkyrie were spread across the ruins, too far to be taken all at once, too many to be ignored. She could launch a precision strike, disable the largest dreadnought, scatter the ground forces. But that wasn't the mission. Not yet. She needed them to feel it first, the sensation they had stolen from every other race, the shock of recognition, the terror of memory. She would not arrive as salvation. She would arrive as proof. Another pulse from Orion snapped her focus back. One of the Valkyrie vessels is altering course. Possible detection. Let them look, she said coldly. They won't believe what they see. Outside the ship, space shimmered. The Aegis Nova shifted posture, its sleek wings rotating into attack formation, its core beginning to hum with latent power. Light bled from its underbelly in ghostly waves. No heat, no sound, only potential. Ilera's fingers hovered over fire controls. They tried to wipe us from the stars, she whispered. But even ashes remember fire. Orion's voice resonated with calm anticipation. Awaiting your command. The Valkyrie vessel accelerated toward her position. A towering cruiser shaped like a blade. Its hull rippled with organic metal. Its weapon systems crackling to life. They had noticed. They were coming. Ilera didn't flinch. She let them come. Let them see what humanity had left behind. Let them learn that extinction was never certain. And far below, on the surface of Virulon, a group of survivors huddled beneath shattered stone. One of them, a young boy with soot on his cheeks and fire in his eyes, heard the signal through a salvaged headset. He turned to the others, voice trembling but loud. They're here, he said. A pause. Humans. They came back. Hope fragile and dangerous, bloomed in that breathless silence. Above, in the shadowed sky, the Aegis Nova ignited its thrusters, turning toward the oncoming enemy. One ship, one pilot, and the war had just begun. The Valkyrie cruiser loomed like a floating cathedral of death, its jagged hull absorbing starlight, pulsing with energy too unnatural to be anything but ancient. It bore down on the Aegis Nova, blind to the irony of its own purpose, destruction wielded with religious certainty. Within the cockpit of the human vessel, Elara Miles narrowed her eyes. Time, to her, stretched into crystalline clarity. The targeting interface bloomed across her vision, outlining the enemy's critical systems. Primary reactor core, sensory array, hull vent points. The Valkyrie didn't shield their ships the way other civilizations did. They believed in overwhelming retaliation, not defense. But that arrogance was something Elara had been trained to exploit long before the fall of Earth. "Orion," she whispered, "calculate optimal rupture path. Overlay initiated. Success probability, 72% at current velocity. Cloak breach upon firing is certain. Then let's make it count." The moment the first missile left its pod, cloaking failed. Aegis Nova was revealed in a flash of blue flame. The cruiser reacted instantly. Its surface cracked open like a breathing beast, revealing an array of weapon limbs that began to charge. But Elara had already moved. The warship banked into a spiral, trailing streaks of plasma as it launched into an evasive arc. The Valkyrie fired. Beams of violet light tore across space, missing by hairbreadths. One clipped the Nova's wingtip, sending a ripple of destabilization through the ship's shielding. Minor damage. Structural integrity holding. Orion reported. Elara gritted her teeth and punched the Nova into a controlled dive, skimming Virulon's upper atmosphere. The enemy cruiser pursued, slower but more heavily armed. Chunks of molten debris rained to the sky as they exchanged fire, turning the heavens above the dead planet into a battleground of flame. Far below, Soraya stood at the edge of the ruined plateau, her crystalline eyes reflecting the fire's streaks in the clouds. She could barely make out the two ships as streaks of motion, flashes of blue and violet darting and colliding in the sky. The others around her, Veth included, watched in reverent silence. None of them had expected a human warship, certainly not one that moved like a ghost and struck like vengeance itself. "She's holding her own," Veth murmured, off-threading his voice. "For now," Soraya replied, "eyes never leaving the sky. But as she falls, they'll find us next." "No," Veth shook his head. "She's not here to fall." Above, Elara initiated the rupture path. Twin torpedoes disengaged from Nova's underside and curved upward in a wide arc, dodging the Valkyrie's counterfire. The cruiser turned too late. Both torpedoes slammed into the aft of its propulsion array, followed by a delayed explosion that ripped through half its length. The detonation lit the atmosphere like a second sunrise. The Valkyrie cruiser began to fall. Elara exhaled, sweat on her brow, jaw clenched. Her ship vibrated from a feedback pulse of the explosion. "Confirmed kill?" she asked. Target vessel entering uncontrolled descent. Secondary reactors compromised. Recovery probability negligible. But Orion didn't relax. New signal. 2 more Valkyrie ships exiting warp. Arrival in 30 seconds. "Damn," she muttered. "They were baiting us." The cloak was no longer an option. Aegis Nova was exposed and wounded. More enemy ships were incoming. And she was still alone. Run diagnostic. "How bad are we?" Flight capability, 82%. Weapons, 65. Cloaking, offline. Void core instability, rising. A whisper of memory surfaced. Astra Vale's voice again, this time urgent. "If you go loud, Elara, you won't be able to hide again. Choose your moment." Too late for choices now. "I'm going down to the surface," she said. "We regroup with survivors. Give them a reason to fight." Acknowledged. Calculating descent vector. Warning. Risk of detection during entry. 100%. She braced herself. Do it anyway. As the Nova tore into the atmosphere, fire wrapped around its hull. The controls rattled, the interface blurred, but Elara held steady. A streak of plasma fire shot across her flank as one of the new cruisers fired a glancing blow. She ignored it. Below, the survivors scattered as a trail of light screamed overhead, carving to the clouds and slamming into the ground with thunderous quake. The shock wave knocked Soraya and Veth off their feet. Dust rose into the air. The others huddled together, unsure whether it was salvation or annihilation. And then silence. The Aegis Nova rested at the edge of the ruins, steaming but intact. Its hull hissed and clicked as it cooled, black glass scorched but unbroken. The main hatch disengaged with mechanical hiss, and Alara stepped into the dust. She wore no helmet, just a sleek, reinforced exosuit that pulsed faintly with energy. Her face, pale from stasis, was streaked with ash and resolve. In her hand was a rifle forged from alloys long since forgotten. On her shoulder blinked the soft blue glow of Orion's portable core. The survivors stared. Soraya rose slowly, her voice uncertain. "You are human." Alara's expression was calm, but her voice held steel. "One of many, or I used to be." A pause. Veth stepped forward. "You sent a message." "I did." "Why?" Alara glanced skyward. "Because the Valkyrie think they've already won. That memory is dead. I came to prove them wrong." Soraya's eyes narrowed. One ship, one soldier. Against them? "Not alone," Alara said. "Not anymore." Behind her, Orion projected a flickering image into the air, a holographic map of nearby systems. Red icons marked Valkyrie incursions. Green dots marked hidden relay points. At least half a dozen lit up in sync. "They're waking up," Alara said. "Old protocols. Buried bunkers. Ghost fleets. Other remnants like me. All it needed was a signal." Hope rippled through the survivors like a breath of oxygen in a vacuum. "You've come to lead?" Soraya asked. "I've come to finish what they started," Alara replied. "But I can't do it alone." Veth looked at the others, scarred, hungry, tired, and then back to her. "We're not soldiers." Alara's voice didn't waver. "Neither was I. Not at first." High above, the new Valkyrie ships began to descend, scanning for their lost brethren, zeroing in on the heat signature of the crash. Time was short. Alara slung her rifle over her shoulder. "We need to move. Fortify. Coordinate. If they land before we're ready, it's over. And if we're not ready ever," someone asked from the crowd. Alara met their gaze. "Then we fight anyway." And in the gathering dusk of a dead world, lit only by fire and resolve, the survivors followed her into the ruins, toward cover, toward defense, toward war. The sky cracked again. The storm was coming. The ground vibrated with a low, percussive rhythm as the Valkyrie landers began their descent. Dust billowed skyward, choking the dim light and casting the ruins of Virulon in shifting shadows. From her position among the fractured remains of fallen spire, Alara peered to the fractured optic lens of a scavenged scope. The enemy ships were precise, brutal, efficient, descending in coordinated formations that mirrored ancient war tactics. They hadn't changed. That was their weakness. She crouched beside Soraya and Veth, both armed now, poorly, but armed nonetheless. Soraya held a modified pulsecaster with exposed wiring and a scorched grip. Veth had a thermal spike launcher with only 2 charges. They looked exhausted, but their eyes carried something she hadn't seen before: defiance. "They're landing east of the wreck site," Soraya said, her voice steady despite the proximity of death. 4 units. Heavy infantry. No flyers yet. Alara nodded. "They want to force us into close quarters. Drive us into the open." "We don't have the firepower to hold them back," Veth said, gripping his launcher tighter. "We don't need to hold," Alara replied. "We need to disrupt. Delay. Force them to think we're more than we are." She reached into a pouch on her belt and withdrew 3 small spheres, each one humming faintly with internal energy. "EMP dispersers," she explained. "Old tech, but still useful. We'll detonate these at entry points. They won't stop the Valkyrie, but they'll buy us time. Confuse their targeting systems." "Time for what?" Soraya asked. "For the others to reach us." Veth frowned. Others. Ilera tapped her interface node. A holographic feed flickered to life above her palm. Distant signatures, subtle pings on hidden channels. Faint but real. Human. Scattered remnants. Some activated by the signal we sent. One's already in orbit, running silent. Another's moving from the Tetra Belt. They're old ships, maybe not fully operational, but they're responding. Soraya looked skeptical. You're betting our survival on ghosts. No, Ilera said. I'm betting on memory. The first wave of Arcari soldiers emerged from the dust, towering constructs of blackened alloy, their limbs bending in unnatural angles, their faceless helms glowing with pale light. They moved with absolute coordination, hive-linked through a mind that had conquered systems without a word. Ilera's first disperser detonated with sharp whump. 3 of the enemies stumbled. Their sensors momentarily scrambled. A single survivor, tucked into Spire's hollow core, emerged from the shadows and fired an old ion charge into their ranks. One Varkari construct fell, twitching, before it was obliterated by its own comrades' return fire. The survivor never moved again. The resistance had begun. Ilera barked orders. Soraya, south flank. Veth, cover fire to draw them east. I'll take the roof. They split without argument. She scaled the rubble in seconds, her body remembering the rhythm of war. She crouched low, rifle at the ready, her HUD dancing with data. Her first shot punctured the skull of a Varkari scout, its body collapsing into smoke and slag. A second shot disabled a weapon's drone mid-flight. Each enemy that fell was replaced by 2 more. Still they fought. Below, Soraya darted between shattered walls, dragging children and elders into the cavernous remains of an ancient library. Her pulse caster hissed with each blast, keeping the enemy at bay long enough for others to find safety. Veth, meanwhile, flanked the exposed ridgeline, using his last spike charge to collapse a tower onto an advancing line of Varkari shock troops. For every second they held, the transmission from Orion pulsed outward. Across light years, signals pierced the silence. In the void between systems, a dormant vessel stirred. A corvette once captained by the Martian Black Division. Its AI flickered online, scanned the encoded message, and began activating systems long thought dead. On a frozen moon in the Hellion Reach, a hidden vault opened, releasing a flight of automated drones programmed with one directive: protect human life. The past was answering, but it wasn't fast enough. Ilera ducked as an energy bolt skimmed overhead, searing a black line across her armor. Her rifle's charge pack blinked red. Low power. No reinforcements yet. No miracles on the wind. Just dust, blood, and choices. She keyed her mic, "We can't hold much longer." Orion responded, "Orbital support en route. Estimated arrival for minutes." "Too long," she said. But even as the words left her lips, she saw something new. Movement to the west. Not Varkari. Not constructs. People. Humans. Dozens of them. Emerging from hidden tunnels and overgrown crevices. Former miners, scavengers, militia ghosts who had gone aground decades ago, responding to the signal, armed with whatever they had managed to preserve: chemical rifles, reprogrammed hunter drones, even sharpened steel. They didn't march in formation. They surged like a tide. One man, bearded and missing an eye, took down a Varkari soldier with a shoulder-mounted cryo-cannon. A pair of young women used coordinated strikes to disable a crawler unit's leg joints and pierce its exposed undercarriage. Soraya saw them first and laughed, short, disbelieving. They came. Veth joined her, shouting above the chaos. She was right. We're not alone. Ilera dropped from her perch, landing in a crouch beside the newcomers. One of them saluted her, awkwardly, like a habit learned and long forgotten. "Commander," he said, "call us ghosts if you want. We remember." For the first time in hours, Ilera allowed herself the briefest smile. The tide turned. Together, the resistance swarmed the Varkari. The air thickened with smoke and laser fire, but also with something more powerful: coordination, strategy, human unpredictability. The enemy faltered. They weren't built for uncertainty. From above, The first of the awakened ghost ships broke through the cloud layer, a sleek, blade-like vessel with hull markings and faded Terran script. Halberd's Wake. It opened fire before it even cleared atmosphere, raining down precision blasts on Varkari drop points. A roar swept through the defenders. The sky, once a silent grave, had begun to speak. Orion's voice returned, calm amid the chaos. More incoming. 2 allied ships, one broadcasting full Terran beacon. Illyra reloaded her rifle and looked toward the horizon, where light shimmered through the smoke and dust. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The others could see it too. Humanity was not dead. It had been waiting, biding time, remembering. And now, as the Varkari forces began to break and retreat into the sky, the survivors of Virulon stood together among the ruins of their ancestors. Dirty, bruised, breathing hard, but not beaten. Not anymore. Illyra stepped forward, her silhouette cast in the crimson light of returning dawn. This was no longer a footnote of extinction. It was the prologue of resurgence. And across the stars, those who had hidden, who had fled, who had mourned the loss of Earth, began to whisper the same truth. The humans had returned.